So without any further ado, I'd like you all to be upstanding to give a big Limerick welcome to our first guest, native Limerick man, Chris Byrne.
Thanks, Pat. How are you? I heard I was invited to a fireside chat. So, being no fire, I thought I brought some turf for you. Okay?
Excellent. That
came off the top of a mountain in Kerry, if anybody's interested.
So, I hope everybody's got their mobiles turned off. So, Chris, you're a man of many diverse talents. Professionally, you're an entrepreneur, coder, founder. And in the little free time you have left, you're an avid runner, sailor, you're a mentor. So before we start talking about your startups, can you share some background about Chris Byrne, the man? So let's go back to your schooling. Were you a mechano kid?
Was I a mechano kid? Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me to the first startup grind in Limerick. This mic is working. And it's great to see it coming. So it's a Google-backed initiative. So it's fantastic to see that. And so in terms of your question, yeah, I was actually my early memory is myself and my brother behind the couch taking apart my mother's sewing machine, which never got put back together again, and I still think I have that problem in terms of breaking stuff.
So you had your engineering-related, design, building-related interests there?
Well, probably. I mean, I ended up down the coder circuit, mostly because of, I think, serendipity and what I did in college. But actually, it was my brother Brian who became the engineer, and he's currently an engineer for a top firm in San Francisco at the moment. Runs in the family, absolutely.
So you referred to college there. You went to college in the University of Limerick. Late 70s, early 80s, was probably still called NIHE.
It was called NIHEL, I think, wasn't that right? There's probably a few people here who are ex-NIHE people.
Probably, and that became UL, and the Dublin version became DCU. You did applied mathematics, is that right?
Yeah, I did a degree called Applied Maths, which was supposed to, be maths applied to real-world business problems. But for me, it was all coding. I actually think I remember skipping lectures, could go down to the computer room and do code, which was fantastic. And actually thinking about UL and NIHE and the effect it's had on Limerick and everybody who went there. I just recently finished the Chuck Feeney biography. I don't know if anybody read that book. Well, you should, because it blew me away in terms of how one individual did a very big thing and changed what Chuck did for all of the educational institutions, not just UL, is outstanding. I mean, it's a really big thing that he did.
So Chuck Feeney was an Irish-American billionaire?
I mean, I don't know a lot about him in that sense, but as far as I know, he started one of the first duty-frees, I believe, and made a lot of money, and then decided to part of his philanthropic thing was to essentially give all of his money away, and I think he's nearly done, as far as I know.
And in your early education before college, what subjects did you enjoy, and were the subjects you hated?
Yeah, that's a tough question, Pat. I can say I enjoyed many. I remember liking Latin all right in St. Munchin's, when I went there. But I definitely wasn't top of the class.
Okay. It's reassuring for the rest of us. So were you disrupted, to use a startup term, were you disrupted in school?
Now we're getting personal.
Okay.
Probably a little bit.
A little bit. From your education, you now have kids. Do you see the education system has improved any? Do you think we've come on?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very hot topic, isn't it? I think it has, and I think it hasn't. That's the easiest way to answer that. And this really does speak to our startup story, and what's happening around us right now, and what was happening around our startup 10, 20 years ago, whatever it was. One of the things we found was that a lot of the graduates that we hired couldn't speak. So I actually had an elocution teacher on retainer to teach people how to speak. So whatever about coding and whatever, but the ability to communicate and to be able to speak is actually critical, and I don't see an improvement in that at all.
Are you talking about public speaking?
I'm talking about, yes, I'm talking about, well, the guys in question were programmers, and so when we hired them in Cashbook, SAI, part of the job meant talking to customers, because that's how you grow your business. You listen to what they say and you take that feedback, but you've got to be able to talk to them, and they couldn't talk to the customers.
Right.
And to this day, I still have, I still send people off to speaking courses. So that is something that isn't. But in terms of coding in schools, absolutely, no question. And we started the Coderdojo in Dingle for that reason. And the reason it happened was because they had a system of bringing in parents to teach for 6 weeks. My wife did the first one, she taught them art, and then it was my turn, and they said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, okay, I'll teach them how to code. And at the time, Coderdojo was just kicking off. I'd heard about it, and I said, oh, fantastic. You got all these lesson plans, and that's, we brought that into
For
play.
people who haven't heard of Coderdojo, Chris, can you just explain that?
Well, Coderdojo, well, who hasn't heard of Coderdojo? That's one. And that never ceases to amaze me. I must tell the folks that tomorrow that every time I ask that question, so it was a great question, I get people saying, what's Coderdojo? So essentially it's an initiative to teach kids to code. I think there are 400 clubs worldwide. It was started by a young man, James Welton, age 17, out of school, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And it's gone viral. There's clubs everywhere. There's Eugene McDonough, is he in the audience?
Yeah, Eugene's here.
So Eugene is one of the top guys in here in Limerick for Coderdojo, and has been a major person behind it, and has been very, very helpful in terms of helping people get up to speed. We've been running the one in Dingle for years now, and it's just fantastic.
So when you left college, you started working, I believe, in analog devices in Limerick. Is that right?
That's right. I got a job as a computer operator in analog on their IBM equipment as part of the co-op system. It was called a co-op system in NIHE at the time, and I believe the popular term is an intern. Now, and of course that was a game changer at the time. In NIHE at the time, a co-op was like, what's that? Because I think a lot of the universities were saying, we're sort of looking down on it, but everyone out of UL and NIHE just got hired. So eventually all the universities started doing that.
From the practical experience of working in industry. And you were there for a couple of years?
In analog, no, I was actually only there on co-op. On co-op, yeah.
So on graduating then, was it on graduation you went to the US?
Yeah, I mean, I only wanted to code, and I wanted to work for a software company, so I basically looked up ads in Computer World, I think, or Computer Weekly or something at the time, and I came across a company that were looking for programmers, and applied and got on the Greenbird to Boston. And everybody else was getting on the Greenbird to Boston for different reasons, but for me, I was off on an adventure. So, yeah. So
your first experience of working culture was the US culture?
It was a US culture, okay. US software company, yeah.
And what motivated you to come back here then?
Well, two things. Family was one thing, and the other one was there was a huge shortage of programmers at the time, just like now. There's a huge shortage of digital marketers, programmers, what have you. At the time, there was a severe shortage worldwide almost. And I have an interesting story to tell about that. And so I offered to set up their R&D center here, and I brought an operation over here. We have lots of great products. I filmed the A story successfully, and we actually set up in the Tate Center of all places, and we had a big IBM mainframe in there. But in terms of startups and doing big things, and how educators, local, the late Michael Gearan from Moylish, or LIT, anybody remember Michael? Michael was a lecturer in he saw there was a programmer shortage, but all of the other universities were producing a different type of programmer. So he said, well, what kind of programmer do you guys need? And I said, we need programmers who can code on IBM equipment. And as it turns out, every other American multinational in Ireland had the same machine, right? Most of them had. So there was a huge gap. So he said, right, he went and begged, borrowed and stole, and got himself machines. I helped him out a little bit in terms of defining the things that were churned out programmers. Every one of them got hired.
Fantastic. So you were running this American operation, the Irish, the European headquarters for this American operation, set it up. At what stage then did you decide to break away and start your first startup?
Well, two things. I had wanted to, I had wanted to build. I was in product management, so I'd kind of gone from the coding to, which is a whole skill set in terms of building a software product and life cycles and all of this sort of stuff. And what I'd wanted to do was get into more of the cash management, payments side of things. So I could see that was really going to go somewhere. They didn't agree. Well,
a long time before Stripe.
A long time before Stripe, but also and in terms of what we did at the time, which we'll come to, when we look at the US market, we thought they were ready and they weren't. But there was an interesting lesson there that I can talk to now. I think is very relevant for startups here, and that is about sales. And like the company I worked for at the time, we had the R&D operation here. They had a big sales operation in the UK, off the M4 somewhere, Maidenhead, where it was a big sales operation there. And it was a very product management focused company. So it was all about building it right and getting it right and waiting and waiting and waiting. But the problem was that another competitor came in, Lawson Software as it happened. And US-based system, no multi-currency, no VAT, right? Accounting software, and they didn't care. They just went and sold it anyway. And then by the time the company I was working for went to the market, they said, "Oh yeah, we're good. We already have it."
So you identified a major problem.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, you have to draw a line. There's a balance between obviously being ready and selling, but what happened there was they let the competition just row in, and they also were, they were ready in time. The competition were, but
so did that enable you to identify?
Yeah, well, and it's I saw that all too often, and I still see that too often. In that, a lot of companies are there, they're polishing the buttons, and this looks pretty, and this is nice, and whatever. But they're forgetting it needs to be sold. Everything needs to be sold. So you were asking in terms of school, one of the huge deficits here still to this day is that we have a sales deficit, in that our startups do not know how to sell, and they need to know how to sell because somebody else is going to do it if you don't. So sales skills are as important as product management skills in building.
So tell us the journey of setting up Software Architects International then. That came next.
Yeah, well, essentially what we did was we looked at, again, at the time we realized that, it's Ireland, the market is small. So what we did was we looked at the product roadmaps of the larger vendors like at the time it was IBM's Mapix, BPix, all of these different enterprise systems. And I knew, gut feeling, that they had a hole in terms of their payments technology, that they, didn't handle VAT correctly, or didn't handle multi-currencies correctly, or didn't handle languages correctly. And so we set about looking at where the gaps were, and we just filled a gap. And we created a product called Cashbook, which was an old, if you think about an old-fashioned cash book, that's what it was. And but it did things like payments and reconciliation with the banks. And the key thing for us, the thing that scaled us and essentially made us a better product. So again, product management is important. What we did was we went around to every single bank in the world, and we built a payment adapter between that bank and the ERP system. So if a corporate needed to pay globally, they had just one product to do that. And that's essentially what we did.
Okay, what led to you having a co-founder, and sort of what practical ways does it help having someone else sharing that initial journey with you?
Yeah, I mean that is a great question, which is interesting because Cashbook was co-founded by myself and Richard O'Donnell, and we actually didn't really know each other at all. But the interesting thing was that we had both worked for Analog Devices. So he'd worked there, but we kind of worked there at different times, which was kind of interesting. And I had said I was doing this. I was kind of looking for partners, and Richard was more sales oriented than I was, and so we decided to throw our hat in the ring. That's how we got together.
Okay. And building a team then from 2 people up to, was it 60 or 70?
Eventually, I think it got to 50 or 60 people at the end, yeah.
So what are your key takeaways on building a team? What would you do differently now? Did you make mistakes?
Well, I am doing it differently now. I have a lot less people.
Okay.
This is what I always say to startups, is that anyone here in this room who's got a business of more than 10 people will already know this. That the biggest problem that you're going to have isn't going to be funding. This isn't going to be technology. It's going to be people. Because you think about it, you're young, you're in your 20s. You've never hired anyone. You haven't got a clue how to hire somebody. How do you do that? Even harder, you've never fired anyone. Okay, and you will have to do that. So those are the kind of key lessons. So what I always say to startups is go get those HR skills if you can. If you're bootstrapping, you're going to have to do it. So go get them. Go figure this out. Go to, you either have it already or get a partner who has it, or go to a course and get those HR skills in terms of how to manage people and build a team and have people that will stay with you for a very long time. Because at the end of the day, certainly in the technology business, it's that domain experience.
That's great advice. As you scale the company and develop the product, how important was it to have boots on the ground in terms of salespeople in the US, the UK, and so on?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, a lot of us, we get on the. Think great, they're all going to buy the product, fantastic, and then we don't follow up, and boots is much better than products. We were very lucky in that a guy. Am I taking this?
Are you here okay?
Yeah. That's Mike better? Okay. Yeah, we were very lucky because one of the guys that had worked with us as part of our partnership approach left the company and decided to run North American operations for us. So we were quite fortunate with that.
Okay. So the sequence of events then that led to your exit, you sold it eventually for $60 million, I believe. Can you go through the sequence of events there that led to that? Was it a plan? Was it serendipity?
No, it was not a plan. It was not a plan, and it was serendipity. There's a backstory. Let me give the backstory first. The backstory is back to the sales story. We got this fantastic lead from I won't mention the city or county because that's not fair. But we got this fantastic lead from a farmer saying, guys, we think we need your product. We got down there. The guy had no interest in buying an Irish produced solution. And I remember saying to Richard, we are never, ever doing this again. Because you would go to the US multinational, if it was an Irish produced solution, and this wasn't from the US guys, this is from the Irish guys.
So they had no faith in the homegrown product?
No, they had not. And so I said to Richard, we are never ever doing that again. And I said, from now on, what we're going to do is we are going to target the HQ. Okay. So we went and targeted the HQs, which are either in London or New York or in a lot of cases Switzerland. And in that particular case, we got a deal with that pharma in 10 countries. It was worth over 600K at the time. And I remember with some satisfaction getting a phone call saying, can you guys come down and install the tape? A year later, the .com thing hadn't really happened, but electronic procurement, electronic payment was getting big. So we started to appear on the radar of a lot of companies like Ariba, Commerce One, guys like that, who were basically saying we are the future, and we know what happened next. So they made us an offer that we couldn't refuse, and we took it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, so a year or two after that fantastic exit, you moved to Dingle Peninsula and enjoyed that wonderful part of the country, and then for some crazy reason you went back building software.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. It's a disease. I don't know. I mean, I like making things, and one of the things I did see at the time when we were cranking through loved working with customers. I loved the listening to them help shape the product, and actually in our case the customers really did it. The customers shaped the product. They actually said, no, you don't have that, you have this. I said, okay, and that's what we went. We actually went with what the customers told us our product was, if you believe that or not. Again, that's I think the case for a lot of people. But I liked doing that. I mean, our first website was 1994. Okay, so actually cashbook.com, if you look at it, I think, if you look at the who is or whatever, I think it's 1994. It looks a little bit better now, I believe. And actually they're doing a way better job. They're doing a fantastic job down there, and I have no involvement with it, and they're doing a fantastic job, it has to be said. But it occurred to me, at the time when people were charging $5,000 for a website, and it was this tremendous, difficult process to build a website. This can't be that hard. So what I wanted to do was come up with a very simple way for people to get online. That's really, really what it was. Now I know people are charging a heck of a lot more than $5,000 to create a website, but that was the genesis of it. And it actually, the SensorPro thing actually started off as a CRM, and we quickly saw there was absolutely no market at all for a CRM. So that's why we changed to email and surveys at the time.
I've heard mentoring referred to as sending the elevator back down to help others up. I know you're a big proponent of mentoring. You've been involved with the Irish Business International Business Network, with Coderdojo, and I believe with Enterprise Ireland. Can you tell us a little bit about mentoring and what you feel? Did you have a mentor early in your career that helped you, or do you just want to sort of help younger guys on their way up?
No, I did. I mean, I did have people who took an interest and gave me direction and said, this is what you need to do, or let's do this. And again, it's back to doing big things. Sometimes a little nudge in the right direction can help a lot. And I don't know. I mean, I'm just happy to just to share my experience. And again, it's just my experience. It isn't necessarily the right answer. It's in terms of sharing what happened with us and the lessons learned along the way. I'm happy to do that. I'm doing that with Enterprise Ireland. I'm doing that with the international IIBN.
Yep.
And it's great because there's some amazing companies coming up, and they're doing some amazing things, and it's I learn from them as well, which is fantastic. So.
What if you had 2 or 3 pieces of advice for startups? What do you think are the most important priorities for early stage guys or girls setting up?
Sales, and sales. That would be it. Yeah. I mean, the obvious ones like building product, having money, getting some money in place is important, but it shouldn't become an obsession. It shouldn't become an obsession. You can starve a while and crank out some product. Definitely, you don't need $1 million to do that.
Just getting near the Q&A time here, just to go back to Chris, the personal side of things. I know you're an avid runner. Mm-hmm. I heard recently you do this barefoot running things. Are you crazy?
No, I'm one of these guys. I'm sure. Who's read Born to Run here? A few people. So, if you remember, they were talking about these sandals, these barefoot sandals on there. There's a company called Luna Sandals in the States that have made this. Essentially, it's a flip-flop. And but yeah, I run in those, and it's great because I save on socks.
So you can feel the road. You've nothing underneath.
Well, the idea is that you run like a child, and so I mean, ever since I've done that, I've had no injuries whatsoever, and I run all the time. That's fantastic.
I see from people I follow in Silicon Valley, founders and stuff, sports and fitness has become huge, and a lot of the really high achievers are also extreme athletes now. What do you think of that connection between sports and fitness and success? Is it very important, the physical fitness thing, to mental agility or whatever it is that makes founders successful?
Well, I just think it's good for everyone. I mean, as I say, movement is good. One of the things, just looking out the window here at 5 o'clock, you see all the guys running. I mean, isn't that fantastic? 10 or 15 years ago, we weren't doing that. We were not running. And and now we have everybody running and keeping fit, and it's fantastic. And of course, being fit is very, very helpful if you are doing a startup in terms of endurance, especially if you have to do these terrible trade shows. Who here has done a trade show? So you need to be fit to do a trade show.
Dirty starts and late nights.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, Chris. Thanks for sharing those insights. Absolutely, and Startup Grind is one platform for doing that, and there's lots of exciting things happening here. The next stage of the evening is the networking, which is the best part of these startup events. And I just wanted to mention the core values of Startup Grind, which are very much in keeping with the Silicon Valley core values. We believe in making friends, not contacts, from a networking point of view, in giving, not taking, and in helping others before helping ourselves. So on that note, I'd like to give a big round of applause to Chris for sharing with us.
Look at that.